Good evening, everyone. This is Hammer, and I am running the Anarchist's TransMissions. Today, I have a guest with me. He goes by LS, and he's a friend of mine on Twitter. Let's see here. So, to start today, I have a little bit of updated info on Afro Man. He is a Marion, Iowa resident. He went and got a lot of documentation from the courthouse. And since the last time I had posted about this, he had been served with a temporary, actually an emergency protective order, basically claiming that he was harassing the public officials at City Hall in Marion, and that hearing has since been dropped, and all charges currently have also been dropped. He is currently looking for a lawyer, and that's the last update I have on him. But I just wanted to let everyone know that he is free. He doesn't have any pending legal action against him, but he will likely be bringing suit against the Marion Police Department and the City of Marion. So with that said, I am going to introduce LS. LS, say hi to everybody.
Thank you for having me on tonight.
Okay, so today we are talking about House Bill H.R. 1808. It is what is called the, let me pull it up here. H.R. 1808 to regulate assault weapons to ensure that the right to keep and bear arms is not unlimited and for other purposes. Tell me that doesn't sound like infringement to you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's got to be one of the yeah, I think what you just said is an understatement.
Yeah, most likely. Let me put up a capture window here so that everyone can see what I'm talking about. Window capture, add source. Bill. Add source. Window. There we go. Okay. Let's go ahead and get this repositioned a bit. Okay, perfect. So I'll go through this just a tiny bit. So in this bill, they're trying to define what an assault weapon is. And basically, what they've come up with is a semi-automatic firearm. Period. They've quite literally gone through almost every feature that you could ever have on a semi-automatic firearm and said if it has two or more of these features, then it is an assault weapon. So, for instance, the term semi-automatic pistol means any repeating pistol that A. utilizes a portion of the energy of a firing cartridge to extract fired cartridge... Or, no, hold on. Okay, so it defines these things. and then it explains what makes them a an assault weapon. So line 16 of page 3. It's number 36. The term semi-automatic assault weapon means any of the following regardless of country of manufacture or caliber of ammunition accepted. Which also means any .22 long rifle is also considered an assault weapon. So their first category is semi-automatic rifle. If it has a magazine that is not fixed, if it has any of the following. So every semi-automatic with a detachable box magazine is now an assault weapon. Tell me that's not stupid.
Yeah, sounds to me like you described my grandpa's old Remington 1100.
Or, I don't know, Ruger 1022. Let's see, but let's go even further. A threaded barrel. That is almost every rifle predating almost every semi-automatic rifle predating the M16, because they would not pin and tack the muzzle brakes onto the barrels. They would thread the barrels and then thread the muzzle brake or the suppressor or the compensator onto the barrel. They would not pin and tack weld that. They also cover a semi-automatic rifle that has a fixed magazine with the capacity to accept more than 10 rounds, except for an attached tubular device designed to accept and capable of operating only with .22 caliber rimfire ammunition. So .22 long rifle. They've quite literally outlawed every semi-automatic rifle.
Oy.
Let's see. Let's go on down to... Oh. Yeah, that's funny. Any part, combination of parts, component, device, attachment, or accessory that is designed or functions to accelerate the rate of fire of a semi-automatic firearm, but not convert the semi-automatic firearm into a machine gun. And this is where we pick up on the stupidity of the committee hearing from Wednesday. Let me go ahead and pull up a video for you guys. Stabilizing braces. So on Wednesday, Representative Fischbach submitted an amendment to allow people to have stabilizing braces on a rifle. And here is the
Before you play that video, I got one thing I'd like to say.
Sure.
Go ahead and pour your drinks. You're going to need plenty of alcohol to get through this.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about that. And you know, I really shouldn't be without alcohol right now, but I am. This is going to be a sad day. So after the amendment was submitted, the first person that responded was the original bill submitter, Mr. Cicilline from Rhode Island. Here's what he has to say.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to the amendment. What this stabilizing brace, which is depicted here, when attached here, it turns this weapon into an automatic weapon. It becomes a bump stock. And so it will allow that to essentially be fired like an automatic weapon. That's the danger. So I have to very strongly oppose the amendment. And I yield back.
Either that guy is just that stupid, or he's lying on purpose.
I have to say he's probably that stupid. And here's why. When you go through and you get all of the context from that portion of the hearing, you realize that the person, Representative McBath, that also chips in on the Democrat side, she says it's to replace the bump stock. And the way that they're talking about it, they're describing a bump stock as a butt stock. B-U-T-T-S-T-O-C-K. Butt stock. I do not believe that Mr. Cicilline or Miss McBath understand that a bump stock is a free-floating device on the buffer tube, and that a butt stock or a stabilizing brace does not free float.
What do I get the feelings that you have to explain things to these politicians like they're 5 years old?
Because you do. They are just smart enough to know how to cheat you out of your money, but not smart enough to know anything about the things they legislate.
Your tax dollars at work, my fellow Americans.
So here's his fellow Democratic representative, Miss McBath.
Thank you, Chairman. I seek to strike the last word.
And ladies recognized.
Okay. I've had a lot of experience, and of course, working with gun safety experts and gun violence prevention organizations over the years, and I understand very, very well what this does, what this brace does. And that's the reason why we had a piece of legislation that would effectively ban bump stocks. And so what you're determining here is that you're trying to substitute using this piece here, that arm brace, as a means of saying that for individuals that have disabilities, this gives them more stability to be able to use the gun. But in fact, it can actually be used to help facilitate the weapon as a bump stock. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and...
So I'm just pausing it right there. A lot of people buy stabilizing braces and they shoulder them. And this is where she gets her belief that it's a bump stock. But I guarantee you that not one single expert that she's talked to has said bump stock. I guarantee that every single one of them has said butt stock. This woman has simply just heard what she wants to hear, and that's why it's in the legislation. Yeah, you're telling me. You are telling me. Give me a second here. I want to try to get this out. I want to get this out to everyone in our Twitter sphere.
Watching this, it's making me think that the patients are running the nut house.
You know, you are not wrong. You're not wrong. We're live now. What is bad talking about? Oh, wow. Okay, so let's get back to the bill. Put that up on the screen here. So, further into this legislation, it says a semi-automatic pistol that has a magazine that is not a fixed magazine and does have any one of the following: a threaded barrel. Well, my Glock is fucked. A second pistol grip. A barrel shroud. Who the fuck has a barrel shroud for a... Okay, you know what? Strike that, because I guess you can't have a barrel shroud on an AR pistol if you've got a long enough barrel. But you gotta be pushing that 16-inch that 16-inch limit if you're gonna have that barrel shroud. With the capacity to accept a detachable magazine at some location outside of the pistol grip. It doesn't even have to be in a feeding area. It just has to be in an area outside of the pistol grip. If it doesn't feed into the weapon, that doesn't matter. If it is held outside of the pistol grip, period, but on the weapon, you're fucked. Which means everyone 3D printing all of these fucking awesome storage areas to put your spare magazine on your pistol, no, you're screwed. The capacity to accept a detachable... already went over that. A semi-automatic version of an automatic firearm. Glock, you're screwed.
Well, I've only got two things to say about what you just said. One, so sorry you lost your Glock in that terrible boating accident. Such a shame. It was a wonderful, wonderful weapon. And secondly, you said something about having a pistol that had a foregrip on it. Isn't that considered any other weapon under the NFA?
If it has a foregrip, yes. But what I'm talking about is...
So I think
what I'm talking about is people have been 3D printing things, and there are also attachments that go onto pistol frames where you can store an extra magazine on the frame. That does not qualify as a foregrip.
Well, that's good.
But now that storage area is on there on those frames, guess what? It's an assault weapon now, and it's banned. You can't print them, you can't buy them, you can't do shit. The ones that have
I missed
the ones that have already been printed, you can keep those, but you can't print anymore.
I miss the days back when the definition of an assault weapon was a rifle that had 3 selections on the trigger: safe, single shot, and then full auto or burst fire.
Yeah. Well, and that's why all of Glock is screwed, because every single Glock runs off of pretty much the same patent. And that's the Glock 17, but once the Glock 18 was made, which is the automatic version of the Glock pistol, everything that's similar to that Glock 18 is now considered a semi-automatic or an assault weapon. All of Glock. They just did away with it. They just put Glock out of business, people.
Yeah, I can't imagine Glock's going to be real happy about this recent legislation coming through, because not only is it going to put them out of business, but it's also going to put a lot of their workers out of work too.
Oh yeah. Let's see. The next two items. A manufactured weight of 50 ounces or more when unloaded. That is definitely a dig at AR platform pistols.
Mm-hmm.
And a stabilizing brace or similar component, also a dig at AR pistols. They don't want people to have AR pistols, people. Let's see here for a second. Okay. Okay, back to the bill. A semi-automatic pistol with a fixed magazine that has the capacity to accept more than 10 rounds. A semi-automatic shotgun that has the capacity to utilize a magazine that is not a fixed magazine and does have any one of the following. A folding, telescoping, or detachable stock. A pistol grip or bird's head grip. What the fuck is a bird's head grip?
I think I know what they're talking about. It's not quite a pistol grip, but it's kind of like more elongated. Kind of like on some of them double barrel shotguns.
Oh, okay, yeah, I got you. A fixed
Yeah, I think that's
magazine
what they're talking about.
a fixed magazine with the capacity to accept more than 5 rounds. Hold on. Okay, yeah. Let's see. The ability to accept a detachable magazine. Wow. They just doubled up on that. So Section F, semi-automatic shotguns. The first one has the capacity to utilize a magazine that is not a fixed magazine and does have any one of the following. The ability to accept a detachable magazine. They doubled up on that.
Yeah, I think the Department of Redundancy department just called on that one.
Well, I mean, the agency of total fuckery is definitely salivating at this. But just in those two clauses alone, in Section 1 of Paragraph F and subsection 4 in Section 2 of Paragraph F, it's one thing, and now just with that one thing, all of them are assault weapons. These people suck.
Even the street sweeper shotgun?
Uh-huh. If you have a detachable magazine on a shotgun, even if it doesn't have any of the other 5 features on it, it's now an assault weapon, and you can't buy it.
I don't think the street sweeper has a detachable magazine, at least not the one I saw.
It has to have a detachable magazine, but the moment it does, it's an assault weapon.
Oy. Well, there goes the Sega 12s.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm about to get into all of the specified firearms that they've gone through and banned. But before I do that, the last shotgun, any shotgun with a revolving cylinder, is
Yep.
is now an assault weapon. So let's look.
That would include the street sweepers.
Yeah, let's look at this long fucking list of all of the specified banned assault weapons according to this bill. It's several pages long. All AK types, period, but also including the following: AK, AK-47, AK-47S, AK-74, AKM, AKS, ARM, MAK-90, MISR, NHM-90, NHM-91, Rock River Arms, LAR-47, SA-85, SA-93, Vector Arms, AK-47, VEPR, WASR-10, and WUM. That's only the first section of paragraph I. Or of
Yeah, there
paragraph
goes
1.
all the fun weapons.
The Sega AK, the Meiji AK-47 and ARM, Norinco 56S, 56S2, 84S, and 86S, Polytechnologies AK-47 and AKS, SKS with a detachable magazine, all AR types including the following. Oh my god. This is where the laundry list is. This is the entire laundry list right here. The AR-10.
To anybody watching this, every time Hammer says AR, take a shot.
Oh god, people are gonna be drunk before I finish this shit. AR-10, AR-15, Alexander Arms Overmatch plus 16, Armalite M15 22 long rifle carbine, Armalite M15 TAC-T, Barrett REC-7, Beretta AR-70, Black Rain Ordnance Recon Scout, Bushmaster ACR, Bushmaster Carbon 15, Bushmaster MOE Series, Bushmaster XM15, Chiappa Firearms M4 rifles, Colt Match Target Rifles, Core Rifle Systems, Core 15 rifles, Daniel Defense M4A1 rifles, Devil Dog Arms 15 series rifles, Diamondback DB15 rifles, Double Star AR rifles, DPMS tactical rifles, DSA Inc. ZM4 carbine, Heckler & Koch MR556, High Standard HSA 15 rifles, Jesse James Nomad AR-15 rifle, Knights Armament SR-15, Lancer L-15 rifles, MGI Hydra Series rifles, Mossberg MMR tactical rifles, Noreen Firearms BN-36 rifle, Olympic Arms POF USA P415. What is Plenty of Fish doing in the arms race?
I don't know. Maybe they just wanted to make a little extra money.
Just to show you people how ridiculous this is, we're in number 32 of just the listed weapons that are not allowed in this because of this bill. The specified weapons. List item 32. We're on page 8, and we've got at least 2 more pages to go.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to finish this one page. Just so people aren't drunk. Precision Firearms AR rifles, Remington R15 rifles, Rhino Arms AR rifles, Rock River Arms LAR-15, Sig Sauer Sig 516 rifles and MCX rifles, Smith & Wesson MNP-15 rifles, Stag Arms AR rifles, Sturm, Ruger and Company SR-556 and AR-556 rifles, Uselton Arms Airlight M4 rifles. Jesus Christ. And then once they finish with the ARs and some of the other carbines, they move on to old Thompson rifles. I mean,
who in the world owns a Tommy gun now?
The Thompson M1SB, the Thompson T1100D, the Thompson T150D, the Thompson T1B. And then they go into Uzi mini carbines. And that's just American-made carbines, and some of them are even Swiss. I mean, Sig is a Swiss manufacturer. Then they list off more specific AK types, like the CZ Scorpion pistol.
Oh, yeah, I've seen them little guys. Pretty neat-looking weapons.
Yeah, I printed a frame for one of those.
Allegedly.
No,
allegedly.
Not allegedly. That shit's up on the internet forever. There's no going back.
Okay, I was just trying to CYA.
And then they've basically outlawed AR pistols, period. They didn't even have a reason to list these, because the second that you ban the second you ban stabilizing braces, hey, guess what? These pistols are already banned, so go fuck yourself. Oh.
Pretty much. Yeah, that's pretty much what they told the American gun owner. Go screw yourself.
Okay, so the list started on page 8. The list ends on page 14. All belt-fed semi-automatic firearms, including TNW M2HB and FN M249-5. So, the semi-automatic version of the saw.
I always wanted to shoot one of those just to see what it's like.
It's very thrilling. The full auto version is very thrilling, but they suck. The M249 is an absolute piece of crap, and it was great for its day. It was, but there's a reason why the U.S. military went out and sought a new, the next generation squad weapon, a new saw, and it's the M250 that SIG has made, and it's much improved, and I fully endorse them getting the M250. It's a great weapon. But the standard infantry rifle that comes along with it, that's supposed to replace the M16 and the M4, and I was telling you about this before, but it is absolutely ridiculous. They should not have submitted that. It does not look forward. It does not look to change or innovate anything in firearms.
And if we're going to talk about why they did that, Go ahead and put on your tinfoil hats, folks.
So, everyone is, I would assume everyone that's watching or listening knows that the military replaced the M9 Beretta. They've replaced it with the SIG P320, also known as the M17 and the M18. They went ahead and they started testing those out in 2014, and the U.S. Army adopted that pistol in 2016. But LS, do you want to tell them what happened in 2014? Or 2014? Or was it 2012?
Well, if I remember correctly, that was when the Russians went into the Crimea Peninsula and took it over.
Yeah. So the U.S.
Comrade Ivan started acting a little ballsy. Can I say ballsy on YouTube?
Yes, you can say ballsy.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a look at this real quick. We're still good on the stream. We're still solid. Give me a second here. Let's go back to the bill. So, the U.S. military has been ramping up for conflict in the Middle East, or not the Middle East, in Eastern Europe for quite a while. Nearly a decade now. And here's the issue that I have with the new standard infantry rifle. It is meant to push out current engagement distances, which we hold at 300 yards at present, which is pretty much on par with all of the AKs that Russia has. And it wants to push us out to 600 to 800 yards for engagement distance. And while that's a great idea in a land fight with no urban terrain, the U.S. military is kind of handicapping themselves in the case of, wait for it, a second civil war in the U.S. And I know, tinfoil hat, and you can call me Tim Pool all you want, but there will be a second civil war in this country, and if they arm the military with the M5 to do this, the military is not only going to suffer the losses like they did in Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan, they are going to lose in much less time than they did in Vietnam. There is no doubt about it. And in all three of these conflicts, the U.S. military has had helicopters, automatic weapons, tanks, you name it, they've had it, and they still lost to farmers,
rice farmers,
and
to
cave
to little men
dwellers.
wearing the funny, to little men wearing the funny little cone hats and wearing black PJs out in the jungle hiding in spider holes. And then in Afghanistan, they lost it to a bunch of folks wearing robes and funny turbans
and living in caves
and long luscious beards.
So when it comes down to it, the military is handicapping themselves by going from an M16 and an M4 to a higher caliber rifle that basically has to operate with the suppressor on to cut down on toxic gases that are released back in the face of the operator.
Oh, I think the Good Idea Fairy had a hand in designing that.
Probably, kind of like the M14.
Well, I do got something I want to say real quick.
Go ahead.
Based on what you were telling us about the M5, I just can't help but feel like this is a repeat of when the M16 was first introduced in Vietnam. Remember all the problems and stuff the M16 had when it was first rolled out?
Yeah, but
Do you
it did.
think the army will? Do you think the army will at least issue cleaning kits for the M5 this go around?
Oh, they won't really have to do much of anything because the service members that are going to get it, they will already have generalized cleaning kits. The only thing they're going to have to get along with it is a bore snake. And anyone that doesn't know, a bore snake is just a piece of rope with some stickies to clean the carbon out of your barrel. You just pull it straight through. It's just like a cleaning rod, but it's a rope.
And if I'm not mistaken, them original M16s that were introduced, they didn't even have chrome lined barrels, and they corroded out quick.
Yeah, they did, and that was an issue, but they still didn't give as much issues as the M14 did. The M14 was killing service members in Vietnam. There was no doubt about it, which is why they so desperately pushed Colt to manufacture the M16 at a high rate, which was why they weren't
Yeah, if I'm
chrome lining the barrels.
And talking about the M14, I if I remember correctly, one of the problems that they were having with it was the jungle humidity was making the wood in the stock swell up.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, folks, back in the day, your daddy and grandpa rifle stocks were made of wood.
Wood is great for collecting. Wood is not great for combat. Unless you're in Germany.
Yeah, say what you will, them Mausers were some good rifles.
Oh, yes, they were. So were the Mosin Nagants.
Well, let me a good Mosin. At least they're still legal for now.
uh, in most states, yes. I do not believe you can have them in New Jersey.
I thought he was fixing to say California, but New Jersey, yeah, I'm not surprised.
Let's see. So back to the bill.
Sorry about the segue, ladies and gentlemen.
Back to the bill. It basically says any combination of parts from which a firearm described in subparagraphs A through K can be assembled. And the frame or receiver of a rifle or shotgun described in paragraph A, B, C, F, G, H, J, or K. The term large capacity ammunition feeding device means a magazine, belt, drum, feed strip, or similar device, including any such device joined or coupled with another in any manner that has an overall capacity of, or that can be readily restored, changed, or converted to accept more than 10 rounds of ammunition, and does not include an attached tubular device designed to accept and capable of operating only with .22 long rifle. Now, I'm gonna get into this. Paragraph 37. Sections A and B. I believe it's Miller v. Bonta. It was originally Miller v. Becerra, which was the California magazine ban. That's already been GVR'd back to California, back to the Ninth Circuit. GVR stands for granted, vacated, and remanded. And that is the exact same language Paragraph 37 is paragraph 37 is the exact same language as the California magazine ban, and it's already been determined unconstitutional.
Gotta say, gotta give gun grabbers this one thing: they are persistent.
Yes, they are. Uh, and now they're actually defining a barrel shroud. I don't know if anyone knows. Barrel shrouds have been a thing ever since the NFA. And they're finally defining it for us. Paragraph 38. The term barrel shroud means a shroud that is attached to or partially or completely encircles the barrel of a firearm so that the shroud protects the user of the firearm from heat generated by the barrel and does not include a slide that partially or completely encloses the barrel or an extension of the stock along the bottom of the barrel which does not encircle or substantially encircle the barrel.
So pretty much they're wanting to get rid of a safety feature on a weapon.
Yeah, they are. Barrel shrouds aren't really used for hardly anything except for automatic weapons. It's a heat sink. Have you ever worked with computers?
Other than getting on the computer and watching YouTube and doing work on them. And by work, I mean like doing office jobs and stuff like that. But I've never really torn into one. But I kind of got a bit of an idea of what a heat sink is.
Okay, well you've seen what a radiator on a car looks like, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's basically a heat sink, but without the water.
Mm-hmm. Fun fact: early machine guns were water cooled. Back to the subject.
Then it goes on to define detachable magazines, stocks, forward grips, grenade launcher. I mean,
who in the world has a grenade launcher?
You'd be
Scratch
surprised.
that. I don't want to know.
I can actually tell you, your local police department has grenade launchers.
Not quite the ones I was thinking about.
They are
but...
40 millimeter grenade launchers that fire beanbags.
I was thinking of the ones that like go up underneath, like the under barrel grenade launchers. That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, those are 40 millimeter grenade launchers.
Mm-hmm.
They simply just separated that from below the barrel of the M16 and turned it into its own gun.
I kind of like the ones that has the multiple chambers on it.
Oh, the cylinder.
Yeah, I like that one. Those are cool.
Okay, so it also goes on to permanently inoperable means a firearm which is incapable of discharging a shot by means of an explosive and incapable of being readily restored to a firing condition. They define pistol grip, threaded barrel, which means you cannot have a threaded AR barrel. If you have a device on the end of it, it must be pinned and tack welded. Which means no more suppressors either. Or compensators. Let's see here. Belt-fed semi-automatic firearm means any repeating firearm that utilizes a portion of the energy of a firing cartridge to extract the fired cartridge case and chamber the next round. It's all the same crap. They quite literally just copy and pasted all of this over and over and over.
Ad nauseum.
So let's go ahead and let's go down to the exceptions to this. Let's see.
Oh, there's exceptions?
Oh yeah, there's exceptions. I was talking about exceptions earlier.
Yeah. Got segued. Sorry about that, folks.
Oh no, I was talking about it privately with you earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry. A little nervous being on YouTube for my first time.
Oh, it happens.
Stuff's running together.
Look at all of these firearms that are just it's another laundry list. It's another stinking laundry list. And
okay. If anybody watching this, whenever we end the stream, is still awake, you cheated.
This is page after page after page of listed firearms. And I'm just trying to get to the stinking exceptions.
Are there any? Just asking for the folks out there watching.
Let's see. It does not show any current viewers. So our friends have abandoned us.
Traitors.
Let's keep looking.
Remember this indiscretion.
Okay, there it goes. It ends at page 122. Let's see. Section 5. Background checks for transfers of grandfathered semi-automatic weapons. Use of burn grants for buyback programs for semi-automatic assault weapons.
Yeah, I think I heard Iraq veteran 8888 talk about that. He made a video on this yesterday, I believe, and discussed that, talking about the grandfathered weapons and everything.
Yeah.
It's horse hockey. Just to put it bluntly, it's horse hockey.
Okay, let's see. Okay. So let's go back to section 3. I went to the end of this and I shouldn't have. Restrictions on assault weapons and large capacity ammunition feeding devices. It shall be unlawful for a person to import, sell, manufacture, transfer, or possess in or affecting interstate or foreign commerce a semi-automatic assault weapon. Paragraph 1 shall not apply to the possession, sale, or transfer of any semi-automatic assault weapon otherwise lawfully possessed under federal law on the date of enactment of the assault weapons ban of 2021. Paragraph 1 shall not apply to any firearm that is manually operated by bolt, pump, lever, or slide action, has been rendered permanently inoperable, or is an antique firearm as defined in Section 921 of this title. And Eric from Iraq Veteran 8888 actually talked about old school M16s, like Vietnam era M16s.
Mm-hmm. Technically, they could be considered antiques.
Yeah, they would qualify under the antique firearm.
But you know how these politicians are. They like to talk out. They like to talk out of both sides of their mouths and their ass at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Paragraph 1 shall not apply to the importation for, manufacture for, sale to, transfer to, or possession by the United States or a department or agency of the United States or a state or a department, agency, or political subdivision of a state, or a sale or transfer to or possession by a qualified law enforcement officer employed by the United States or a department or agency of the United States or a state or a department, agency, or political subdivision of a state for purposes of law enforcement, whether on or off duty, or a sale or transfer to or possession by a campus law enforcement officer for purposes of law enforcement, whether on or off duty. That's just one. It basically exempts all state employees. Every government employee is now exempt so long as they're part of the executive branch.
Gotta protect their guardians.
Gotta protect their enforcers, their thugs.
I was trying to be a little more nicer about it, but what you said is true too.
Paragraph 1 shall not apply to the importation for or sale or transfer to a licensee under the Title I of the Atomic Energy Act of 1954 for purposes of establishing and maintaining an on-site physical protection system and security organization required by federal law or possession by an employee or contractor of such licensee on-site for such purposes or off-site for purposes of licensee authorized training or transportation of nuclear materials. So power companies. Let's see. The possession by an individual who is retired in good standing from service with law enforcement agency and is not otherwise prohibited from receiving a firearm of a semi-automatic assault weapon sold or transferred to the individual by the agency upon such retirement, or that the individual purchased or otherwise obtained for official use before such retirement. This is where things get really shitty.
Yeah, what you just said is 100% bullshit. And what it does is it creates two classes of citizen. One class can have pretty much any kind of weapon they want, whereas the rest of us little knuckle dragon peons have to get stuck with the shitty weapons.
Yeah, so for everyone's understanding, this makes an exemption for everyone in the executive branch of the United States, both at the federal and state level, but does not make an exception for military service members.
Well, you know why, don't you?
Yeah, they're afraid they're going to turn on them.
Given everything that's going on, would you blame them? Hypothetically speaking, of course.
Let's just be honest. They try to save face in this. I think it was in Cicilline's first argument after this amendment was proposed to create an exception for military service members. Here's the exception. It was proposed by Representative Johnson of Louisiana. Let me go ahead and put that up on the screen. Here we go.
All kidding aside, Mr. Chairman, I actually do believe this is an amendment that you all will agree with, because I'm going to assume this is an oversight. This amendment would exclude active and retired members of the military from the restrictions in this bill. Under the current bill, active and retired law enforcement officers are exempt from the restraints of the legislation, but active and retired members of the military are, for some reason, left out. Again, I'm going to assume that was a good faith error. The chairman argued that his opposition to my previous amendment that would have included pregnancy care centers among those exempt from the restrictions in the bill was based upon his concern that those ladies had no training and thus couldn't possibly be trusted to handle these firearms for self-defense. But here's the distinction, obviously, about this amendment is that, you know, any member of the Army, for example, let's take the Army, is exposed to 3 phases of training during their initial entrance into the military. These phases consist of learning how to disassemble, reassemble, and clean their weapon, as well as safe handling procedures. That's phase 1. They learn to actually fire it in a safe and accurate practice, as phase 2. And finally, they learn to shoot targets from 3 firing positions, phase 3. That is equal, if not more, than the training of many law enforcement officers who, you know, again, are covered in your bill draft.
So, the representative makes a good point. And I've talked about this before in my TikToks that officers do not get training, they get qualified. They have a bare minimum qualification standard that they have to meet and no follow-on training that they have to take. They have to qualify, I believe, yearly, if not every 6 months. Do not quote me on that, but that is pretty much the bare minimum everywhere. You have to qualify at least once a year, and then you're good. But the qualifications for firearms, both in the military and in law enforcement, are severely lacking in any training on dynamic combat situations, which is anything where you are alone.
Excuse me.
In any situation where you are alone and you have to operate a firearm, that is a dynamic combat situation. Most civilians, they actually get follow-on training after they get their concealed carry training. And concealed carry training in most states is just, hey, here's the laws of the state. And as long as you take the course and a instructor says you took the course, you take that back to your local sheriff and say, hey, I took the course, and they'll do a background check on you and they'll issue you your concealed carry permit. That's it. It's done. Most of those people actually go and take follow-on training from there. The NRA, Puke, provides follow-on training. USCCA provides follow-on training in multiple different categories. Home defense, rifles, pistols, home defense pistols, and these instructors, especially the ones with USCCA, they actually tailor their courses for dynamic situations. They'll put you under high stress to teach you how to handle those situations. These are things that most law enforcement officers and most veterans do not get while they are in service. What's wrong here? Why do we have service members that don't get follow-on training? They just qualify. Now, the basics are simple. The basics are easy to keep down. It's 4 weapon safety rules. Check your breathing and make sure you've got good eye stock relief. those are your basics. A monkey can master that. And that's what we qualify in the military with. Now, infantry personnel, they're a little bit different. They get to go out and they get to practice in the field on a consistent basis, but it's still not a dynamic situation because they're working in teams of 2 or 4. There's no dynamic mix here because the whole idea to the military and their tactics is shock and awe. You storm the building, you get your bad guys, you're out of there. Basic conventional thinking is 2 men can get 4 when you breach a building, and 4 men can get 8 when you breach a building. There's enough time for a service member to get 2 each when you breach a building. But what happens when it's just yourself and you're up against 8 guys? Or you're up against 4 guys? What happens? That's what this follow-on training is for individual citizens in the U.S. It's to learn how to deal with those dynamic situations. If you do have to breach a room, which is extremely unlikely as a civilian, but let's say that you do have to breach a room, what do? You get your first 2 as soon as you can blow through that door, and then you find cover. You should be finding cover before you even hit your first 2 targets. But they don't teach that in the military. They don't teach that in law enforcement. This is something we learn as civilians. Okay, so that's the whole dynamic combat situation. So the Democrats on this one issue, let's hear from the chairman of the committee, Mr. Nadler.
Oh,
I
boy.
recognize myself in opposition to this amendment. Retired law enforcement officers have specific duties under state law and are therefore exempt from the prohibition. Military veterans do not maintain their weapons upon leaving the military. Military service members don't keep weapons, their military service weapons with them. They are stored at the armory and issued only upon deployments or training. Veterans experience very high rates of PTSD, and there should be additional protections to ensure their safety. Retired law enforcement officers obviously don't have their weapons
It's insane.
stored in the armory.
Did you
What
hear
is that guy smoking?
Did you hear where he screwed up?
Yeah, he just claimed that every single military veteran has PTSD and should not be allowed to own any firearms.
Yeah. So, when it comes to owning while on active duty, you generally have to get permission from your command to purchase. If you live on base, you have to store your weapon in the armory of your unit. If you don't live on base, you don't have to store your weapon in the armory of your unit. Mr. Nadler is not aware of this. He thinks simply because some veterans that lived on base said you have to store it on base in the armory, that must go for everyone. Well, I got some news for you, Mr. Nadler. That ain't true.
I don't think Mr. Nadler would care anyways. He's got an agenda and he's going to push it come hell or high water.
So a lot of people think that service members aren't allowed to have their weapons in the barracks because they're a danger to themselves. which isn't completely far-fetched, but it's not for the reason that people think. So take my 5 years in service as example. Mind you, I spent most of my time not living in a barracks. I lived out in town because most of the time I was married. When you live in the barracks as a single service member, you do some pretty stupid shit. And you're not living in something that you lease. You're not living in something that you have a responsibility to maintain. You're living in U.S. government property. You're sleeping on their beds. You're storing your shit in their storage lockers. You are doing everything in their barracks, which in and of itself is a tax fraud. I'm not getting into that, not today. But
Sounds like a great subject for a future video.
oh yeah, it is. But along with you can't have your weapons in the barracks, you also can't have a toaster. You can't have a hot plate. You can't have candles. You can't have a microwave. Well, some units will allow it. I know that when I was in, our unit provided all of our barracks rooms with a microwave and a refrigerator. But that doesn't change the fact that the rule exists. You're not supposed to have a microwave in the barracks because you can burn shit. And it's their shit. It's not about...
What about alcohol?
Well, you can have alcohol so long as everyone in the room is over the age of 21 and you're an NCO. If you have someone in the room that's under the age of 21 or you have no NCOs living in the room, there's no alcohol allowed. But there is alcohol allowed in the barracks outside of your barracks room in the common areas, like the sidewalk or the breezeway or the lounges. That's also at unit discretion.
And you get a bunch of soldiers or Marines drunk on the weekend with nothing to do. Do the math.
Exactly. It's not about Marines being, or service members being suicidal. It's about service members being stupid and doing stupid things.
Mm-hmm.
Because in your late teens and your early 20s, you're going to do some stupid stuff. It's inevitable. And most service members are between the ages of 17 and 24. Most people get a 4 to 6 year contract. If you join when you're 18, you're getting out when you're 24. For me, I joined when I was 20 and I got out when I was 25. But yeah, Mr. Nadler basically said we all have PTSD and the risk is too high. So now we go on to a hilarious interaction between Mr. Gomert, the Republican representative, and Mr. Cicilline, the person who proposed H.R. 1808. I will start with
For
Mr.
another For another shot, folks.
Yeah. Let's start with Mr. Cicilline's response to Mr. Gomert.
I just want to say, of course, I hope everyone on this committee reveres and respects the extraordinary service of our men and women in uniform. We all, I hope, recognize that the men and women who serve in the military make tremendous sacrifices, as do their families. And
I'm going to stop you right there, Mr. Cicilline, and tell you to suck my she-dick. It's very blatantly obvious.
Stephanie.
It's very blatantly obvious with what he's about to say that he doesn't believe what he just said. Now, listen to this.
And I think everyone is in their debt, and we can never fully repay them. I think the chairman is quite right that there's a real danger in creating categories of exemptions for all the obvious reasons. But I would also like to just remind
Will the
Mike,
gentleman
let me just
explain the
finish.
obvious
Let me just
reasons?
finish, Mr. Gomer. I think the other thing that is
All the obvious reasons. All the obvious reasons. No, they're not obvious to me, and they weren't obvious to Mr. Gomert, which started this interaction.
Mr. Cicilline said that, can't make an exception for obvious reasons. They're not obvious to me unless they're an insult to the military. I'm wanting to know what those obvious reasons are for not providing the same exemption for service members trained with weapons that are provided for law enforcement.
Now, I'm pausing there because what comes next is a dead silence for a good 15 seconds. And I'm going to play this silence.
He's going to need some help with that.
Well, I'm just going to wait and see what the obvious reasons are.
I mean, it was obvious to our staff.
It's the gentleman's time.
Well, apparently they're not very obvious to my friend Cicilline, but
Would the gentleman...
I'll give him time to think of what the obvious reasons are, because there are men and women around the country that would like to know the obvious reasons that they are not going to be allowed to be exempted from this, like law enforcement.
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes.
And Nadler is going to come in with this.
Mr. Cicilline has already explained that.
No, he said for reasons.
Explained what, Mr. Nadler? He didn't explain any obvious reasons. You, on the other hand, explained your reasoning very clearly. You think we all have PTSD and are crazy and are going to go on a murderous rampage. This all goes back and forth for quite a while. And we hear from several people, but I swear some of the most hilarious interactions come about halfway through, starting with Miss Macbeth.
What was the question again to my Republican colleagues? Was there an example of an active duty military individual that actually was convicted of a mass shooting? Was that the question?
No, ma'am, that was not. My question was whether or not an active duty member of the military or a veteran had ever committed a school shooting. And I honestly don't know the answer. So if you know of one, I'd love to be enlightened.
Well, I'd just like to read, I'll read to you here. The U.S. Air Force was ordered to pay more than $230 million to survivors and families of those killed in 2017 mass shooting at the First Baptist Church of Sutherland Springs. A federal judge ruled Monday evening.
So, LS, did you happen to catch that shooting?
No, I've never even heard of it. The only shooting that I remember hearing about involving a military member was that mess that happened at Fort Hood under Obama's administration.
Yeah, so in 2017, or in 2016, I can't remember which, a former dishonorably discharged airman, he obtained a AR-15. Take some shots, people. He obtained an AR-15 from a gun store, an FFL, and he went and he shot up the First Baptist Church of Sutherland Springs, Texas. But it didn't hit the majority of the news. And do you know why?
Wasn't that the one where the people in the church were armed and they killed the guy before he could really do any damage?
Nope.
Darn it.
There was a man that lived pretty stinking close to the church, and his daughter was outside and she heard the gunfire. She went inside, told him. He came out. He heard the gunfire, and he told her to stay inside. He went inside, grabbed his AR-15, and he saw, as he was coming back out, a man with a gun getting into a truck and driving away. At which point he flagged down a vehicle, and he started taking shots at the shooter. He successfully killed the shooter with his AR-15.
And what you want to bet they're not even going to mention that?
They're not. And not even the Republicans in this committee hearing are going to say anything about it because they buried it so deep. And this is why I've called this show the Anarchists transmission, because I see how corrupt this government is. It's not just the Democrats. It's not just the Democrats that want to take your guns. It's the Republicans too. They just use this as a wedge issue to, continue getting elected by their constituency.
Yeah, I was fixing to ask you earlier, where in the hell are the Republicans and Libertarians at speaking out against this?
Twitter.
Not quite the place I was looking for, but I'll take it.
We are only on Twitter because everywhere else we are shunned, including government.
I was kind of looking for a couple of Republicans to start speaking up in this whole mess that you're showing us, trying to set these idiots right, but I haven't even seen anything like that yet.
Well, if you want to see something like that, Mr. Massey. But before I get to Mr. Massey, I want to introduce Mr. Cohen of Tennessee. He is another Democrat representative.
Okay, before she plays Mr. Cohen, take 3 shots.
So there is a dress code for anyone and everyone that is participating remotely in committee proceedings. And generally that's a skirt and blouse and jacket, or, dress pants, button-up shirt and sports jacket, things like that. Now take a look at Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Ms. McMath. I don't know if there's any real reason for us to be going down this rabbit hole, but there was a military fella in Texas that kind of went nuts on the base and killed some folks down there. I think it was Fort Hood, but I'm not sure.
Lord.
And there was a guy in Florida, probably Mr. Gates's district, who went kind of crazy and shot some people too, military guy. So it's not
Well,
like
he was in the
because you're
Saudi
military,
Arabian
you should get a
military. No,
Excuse me, sir?
I don't think Mr. Johnson's amendment deals with the Saudi Arabian military. It deals with ours, just for
But he
clarification.
was working with us. But regardless, being military doesn't mean you necessarily should be exempt from any particular laws like that.
Would the gentlelady yield?
Do you guys see a problem with his attire?
Yeah, he looks like he just got out of bed.
Not only that, but he's wearing a stained white t-shirt. This t-shirt has been through the washer more than his... I can't say it. I can't say it on YouTube.
Why not? You already told him to do something kind of naughty earlier. We might as well go ahead and say we're not monetized anymore.
That t-shirt has seen more laundry than his dick has seen women.
Well, I'm not going to argue with that.
So immediately after this, I believe it was Mr. Gomert took issue with the fact that, you know, we've got a committee member that is not in proper attire, and that's where this comes in.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chairman?
The gentleman will state his parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Chairman, when this committee adopted remote participation in committee proceedings, did we abandon the dress code and allow individuals to wear T-shirts when they participated in our proceedings?
Members are advised to dress appropriately.
Nadler gave his friend a slap on the wrist. Hey, just be more conscious about it, because from then on, Mr. Cohen turned off his camera.
I do got a quick question I want to ask, hypothetically speaking.
Yeah.
Had that been a MAGA Republican or a Libertarian that done that, do you think Nadler would have been as nice to them?
Oh, absolutely not.
Gotta love the double standard. Don't you
yeah,
just love it?
It's rules for thee, not for me. I guarantee that at least 3 committee members on the other side of the aisle would have been calling for their removal from the committee.
Mm-hmm.
But I have some interesting news about this entire hearing. At one point during the hearing, there was, it was before the lunch break, there was a disturbance from the theater. The crowd, the people that are watching the hearing from from inside the hall. Mr. David Hogg was removed.
Say that name again, please.
Mr. David Hogg. What?
Come on, Porky!
The young man that has made his adult living from the Parkland shooting, the Stoneman Douglas shooting in Florida. He's made his living off of that shooting that he was nowhere near. He was nowhere near that shooting. And he has been one of the biggest voices in favor of gun control that has already been ruled unconstitutional via the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Hogg's father a Fed agent?
I do not know. I should research that.
Yes, because I don't know how true it is, but I've heard hearsay that his father's a Fed. So if that's true, make of it what you will.
David Hogg's father.
I mean, come on. Come on. Look at what David Hogg's been doing. He's asking to get riffed on. Don't you agree? I mean, he's just asking for it.
Kevin Hogg, a former agent of the Federal Bureau of Instigation. Yes, David Hogg's father was a former agent of the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. I didn't even know that.
Well, I heard it. Well, I'm not really going to say where I heard it from, but I didn't have the time to really research it. But it's confirmed. Hog boys, daddy's a Fed.
But Mr. David Hogg was in the theater, and during the morning proceedings, decided to make a disturbance, at which the Republican side of the committee aptly called out that by Democrats' definition, that's an attempted insurrection. David Hogg incited an insurrection.
When they get their own rules played against them.
You heard it here first, people. David Hogg is an insurrectionist.
I knew it.
Let's see. Okay, so we start getting pushback from Representative Massey, who I somewhat admire. He's definitely getting tired, and he's only been in since the 2020 term, I believe. Since I think he was elected in 2020. But here's his first interaction on this amendment.
You know, at first I thought this amendment was already in the bill. I mean, this was in the gun control bill they had a couple weeks ago. And now they're acting like it's the end of the world. That you're going to let somebody who's a member of the armed forces have one of these weapons. It was literally in the bill a couple weeks ago. And they've kept the exemption for police officers. What they've expanded it, or they've at least positively reiterated that these rights belong to bureaucrats at the Department of Education. That these rights belong to bureaucrats at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. But these rights don't get to be exercised by members of the armed forces? This is crazy. Under what pretense can you say that we know in this committee that any bureaucrat, there's no limit to like the police force at the Department of Education. It's every single, I think they have 4,000 people there making an average of $100,000 doing basically nothing. But they are, every one of them by this bill, all 4,000 bureaucrats in that agency allowed to carry one of these firearms, and a member of the armed forces is not? This is just ridiculous.
Gentlemen,
I'll yield to the bill sponsor, and then I'll yield to you.
Well, I mean,
So the first thing that I really want to point out when it comes to Mr. Massey, have you ever seen the comedian Louis Black?
No, can't say that I have.
Have you seen the movie Accepted?
No.
Kid
I'm
gets
boring.
High school kid gets rejected by every college that he applied to. And so he created his own college near where he lived. and it was just supposed to be a way to fool his parents so that they'd think he got into college and wasn't wasting his life. And it turned into a real college. Well, he had to get a dean for the college, and the man that he got was Lewis Black. Lewis Black is a famous comedian, but he's got this thing where he talks with his hands, and it's very wild, and it looks like he's stupid as he's doing it. He could say the most intelligent thing, and the way his hands move just make him sound stupid when he says it. Those are the hand movements of Mr. Massey. Immediately after, he yielded to Mr. Johnson, the person that proposed the amendment to this legislation.
Just to state an obvious point. I mean, it's so blatantly, it's crazy. It's probably also blatantly unconstitutional. I mean, you got a really awesome equal protection argument here, right? Like, oh, the bureaucrat does it, but I can't. This bill, I mean, on its face, it's a joke. Yield back to you.
It is, and I'll yield time to my friend from Texas, Mr. Gomer.
Let's not get into the specific segue that Mr. Gomert and Cohen get into, the little banter about Gomert's voting record for the presidents over the past 40 or 50 years. So I'm leaving Gomert out of this entire stream. I don't want him in this. But we'll go back to Mr. Massey as he reclaims his time from Mr. Gomert.
And I think the gentleman from Texas, I would just close by urging my colleagues to respect the men and women who put the uniform on. They were born with the right, but by golly, they earned it again, doubly, by being willing to put their lives on the line for us, and to tell them that bureaucrats, by virtue of being bureaucrats at any one of 60-some departments in this government, can't have rights and they don't, is really just disrespectful, and I urge adoption of this amendment.
He honestly believes, Mr. Massey honestly believes, that we are born with inalienable rights. They are not given to us by government, which is something that I can't say about pretty much any other Republican in this committee.
Well, I only got one thing to say about them Republicans in this committee. They better enjoy their time in Washington while they can, because assuming nothing happens between now and November, they're pretty much out of a job.
Yes, they are. When it comes down to it, this entire thing is simply just, it's smoke. It's all smoke.
These politicians, this is what comes to my mind. Craps in the bed, and then wipes their butt cheeks with the sheets and then leave. Well, the politicians are the ones crapping in the bed, and the bed is our country.
So you're saying that they're amber turding our country. Got it.
Yes. Turd, turd, turd. Turd's a word. Amber Heard left a turd.
Let's see.
Ooh, we went off into the weeds on that one.
And, you know, there's a bunch of Republicans that just, they beat this. They beat this dead horse with a stick. There's Fitzgerald, there's Sparts, and Sparts is actually an immigrant from the former Soviet Union. And it's kind of boring.
Insert communist joke here. Literally and figuratively.
So it goes from Mr. Massey to Mr. Fitzgerald, and then to Miss Sparts, and then to Mr. Bentz, and then to Mr. Gates, who, at the beginning of this hearing, he was in the committee chamber. But he left after the first amendment was proposed, the amendment for the stabilizing braces, and he was in another committee. It goes from Gates to Shabbat, and then Mr. Massey comes back in with this.
Need about 30 seconds to point out an error in this bill. On page 59, line 15, you list the Ruger 7744 as a rimfire. That's a 44 caliber rifle. You do not, if somebody offers you a 44 caliber rimfire, do not shoot it. And if you want to fix your bill, you're going to want to probably strike line 15 on page 59. Thank you. I yield back to.
If someone gives you a 44 caliber rimfire, they want you dead.
Yep. Yep, I'd say so. Because I want to say that the last time rimfires in that caliber were ever made were during the 1800s during the Indian Wars. You know, with the old-timey Springfield trapdoor rifle.
Oh, yeah.
Those were rim-fired.
But, you see, those were made to take the chamber pressure. We don't make weapons anymore to take chamber pressures that high for rimfire.
Well, you see, not only that, but them old-timey trapdoors, they were meant to fire black powder, not modern smokeless powder.
Yeah. And honestly, chamber pressures are a huge thing. The only thing that you're going to get away with rimfire on is 22 long rifle, 22 short rifle. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe. And don't forget 22 Magnum and the 17 HMRs. They're rimfire too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, they are. So there's one other portion of this where, or no, two other portions of this where Mr. Jones cuts in. He cuts in on Mr. Gomert, and he also Miss Macbeth yields time to him. So let's go to the first one.
Yes.
There were approximately 376 law enforcement officers outside of the Uvalde shooting.
So is the reason you'll exempt them because they won't pull their weapons?
For over an hour. So I just, just to the specific example that you gave, sir, I think...
Well, you're not making sense because they did not do what they should have done.
Okay, so this all stemmed from how Mr. Gomert believes that if there had been a military veteran or active duty service member on site, he would have breached, he would have gone in and immediately taken out, or at least tried to take out, the shooter at Uvalde. And Mr. Jones now equates military service members to law enforcement, but he doesn't when it comes to adding the proposed amendment. And that is where the logic is flawed. He thinks we're law enforcement, but he thinks we're not law enforcement. Two completely separate mentalities. Yes.
I may be a history nerd, but I'm not really all that bright when it comes to military tactics and stuff like this. But let me ask you something. Are door kickers good cops?
Generally, no.
I'm talking
Generally speaking,
About the only
that is a no.
About the only good thing door kickers would be good for is a SWAT team having to take down a bunch of terrorists.
Well, and that's where the team dynamic comes in when breaching. I'm sure you've seen people on Twitter, especially me, tell others to stack up. Do you know what a stack is?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so
Stack. Okay, that video with Afro Man when those cops were getting ready to kidnap him.
Yep, that was a stack.
That's a stack up.
It's not a traditional stack, obviously, that they were in, because a military.
But it's close enough.
Yeah, a military stack, you are nut to butt from first person to last person, and your weapon is over the shoulder, the right shoulder of the person in front of you. And as you breach, you fan out. And the last person in the stack is the person that breached, the person that kicked in the door. Because they were initially the most exposed, so they had to get out of the way so that, there was still shock and awe to take out the people in the room. So that is a stack. If they had just simply followed a two-man breach tactic where one breaches, one goes in and puts down the shooter, it wouldn't have been an issue. All you need is two people on site and the element of surprise. So, yeah, 300 law enforcement agents on site that did nothing. That's not military training. That's not even police training. The standard is supposed to be, if you are on site, even if you are alone, you are to breach. You need to make entry. We don't care if you die, you need to try. But then you come in with the U.S. Supreme Court in its rulings saying that law enforcement has no obligation to our security.
Yeah.
They have.
I remember hearing about that.
They have an obligation to enforce the laws of our masters. Oh, how the tables have turned, Mr. Jones. This is the second interaction with Mr. Jones after Miss Macbeth yielded time to him.
Miss Macbeth, would you yield?
I think she's yielded to me, Mr. Cohen. Just to bolster the example that was just provided, first of all, it does not matter whether it was a school shooting or some other mass shooting, given the purpose of the assault weapons ban today. I would just make that obvious observation. But at a Sikh temple in Wisconsin called Oak Creek, there was a veteran of the military who perpetrated a mass shooting in that case. Obviously, in Fort Hood, there was another mass shooting. So it's clear that there are people within the category that the gentleman seeks to exempt from this assault weapons ban who themselves should not automatically be eligible for possession of these assault weapons.
Just another nail in the coffin when it comes to they don't believe that military service members should be able to carry weapons. So why do they arm us?
I'm going to translate what Mr. Jones just said. We're about to screw over the American people, and in order to keep them from fighting back, we got to make sure the military veterans are disarmed.
It's not just the vets. It's active duty, too. let me go back to the bill and show you.
Uh,
So, um, the possession by an individual who is retired in good standing from service with law enforcement agency and is not otherwise prohibited from receiving a firearm of a semi-automatic assault weapon sold or transferred to the individual by the agency upon such retirement, or that the individual purchased or otherwise obtained for official use before such retirement. So they've carved out an exception for law enforcement, both active and retired, which means they're not willing to carve out an exception for active duty service members. They know that they're a threat to their governance.
that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
this whole thing's just a big Charlie Foxtrot.
yeah, it's not just veterans, it's active duty personnel too. They will not allow active duty personnel in the military to buy any of these weapons. So if you are a lance corporal in the Marine Corps and you are just turning, 18, 19, 20, 21, you still can't own an AR-15. Take a shot.
Oh.
Mr. Johnson from Louisiana does come in and, say a little bit about this.
Thank you. I'm not sure if you're aware, but according to the latest numbers, this is 2021 data, Department of Defense, there are 1.195 million active duty military and more than 778,000 reserve forces. You can cite 2 or 3 examples of military-related folks who have been involved in violence, but I hope that you are not suggesting, because there are a couple of outliers, that all those, we're talking about almost 2 million people as we speak, that should be ineligible to exercise their rights on the same basis as law enforcement officers, because there's a couple of outliers. The logic here escapes me.
No, the logic doesn't escape you, Mr. Johnson. That is the exact logic that they're using. You have just explained their logic to the world. Because there's 1 or 2 people that have shot up churches or military bases. We must keep these weapons out of the hands of all service members. That's honestly the logic that they've had from the start. That's why they want to ban these firearms from normal civilians as well, because they're outliers. Even though we hear about these mass shootings, they're few and far between. They just seem common because they're reported by the media, but they're rare given region and given population. They're extremely rare. The ones that are publicized, they're extremely rare. Most mass shootings happen in urban centers, high population density areas. And you don't hear about those. You only hear about the ones in the suburbs.
Yeah, you only hear about the ones that push whatever agenda the government has on their mind at the time.
Now, some of the Republicans brought up the Greenwood Park Mall, where a 22-year-old put down a mass shooter within 15 seconds of the mass shooter opening fire. The 22-year-old, Mr. Dickin, he had a Glock. We do not know what kind of Glock he had, but we have confirmed that it was a Glock. And the mass shooter had 2 AR-15s. He placed 8 out of 10 shots in the mass shooter and put him down within 15 seconds of him opening fire. He moved from 50 yards to 40 yards behind cover to take his shot. And he was successful. This is a suburban area of a major metropolitan area. Greenwood, Indiana is just south of Indianapolis, right off of Interstate 65. We heard about that simply because it was a metro area, outside of the metro area. Let's see here. I think that's where I'm going to drop this. And I'm going to put on a little bit of music for everyone to listen to as we roll out for the day. But I just want to say that I appreciate anyone that listens to this as we are... anyone that listens to this... obviously after the fact, because we've had 0 viewers, but I appreciate...
Hey, gotta start somewhere.
I appreciate you all.
Gotta start somewhere.
And I want to thank LS for joining me tonight. I hope he will join us in the future. And I hope that he will also join us along with other people in the future. With that being said...
Yeah, our group chat.
With that said,
Well,
I'm going to sign this out. LS, say your goodbyes.
Take care, everyone. Sweet dreams. Good night. God bless.
And you are listening to Deep Space Samurai.